Hello everyone, I'm Mike San Clemente with Stratogists.com. This is my late August 2013 webcast, and I want to talk to you today about fielding ratings. In particular, I'm going to give you my predictions of the Boston Red Sox, every major player on their roster, and what I think their fielding ratings are going to be. And the thing about the Sox, the thing about any team really, is where they're going to fall in the standings. If you're a playoff team versus not a playoff team, we've seen in the past that Mr. Richmond and Strat-o-matic will vary a player's defensive rating, maybe up or down just a little bit, to play with where they're falling in the standings. So I want to walk through that a little bit. First, though, a bit of a housekeeping note. It is now available for pre-order, and the it is our 9th annual rookie review, where we cover usually over 200 carded players. Any player that's going to get a card that didn't get a card last year, we cover them. We've been doing it for 9 years. And we appreciate you guys continuing to give us your business. You keep buying it, so we're going to keep making it. So if you go over to Stratogists.com, actually the first thing, if you hit pause over here, then you jump over to Stratogists.com, put in your pre-order, come right back. You don't miss anything. And you'll get yours late fall is where we're projecting that to be available. So getting over to the Red Sox. Sox are an interesting team. They're battling Tampa right now for first place. They've got about half their players, I think, are pretty set with their ratings, and the other half could kind of play a little bit. And they have an interesting wrinkle at shortstop with Mr. Iglesias that I'll get into in a second. But let me go around the horn. We'll start with the big man with the big last name, Jared Saltalamacchia. Right now, he's got a 19% caught stealing rate for a catcher, which is not good. He got a +2 last year. Sorry, he got a +1 last year. I think he could get a +2 this year. The Sox finish in first. Probably better chance at a +1. I don't see a 0 with him. There have been some teams that have really taken advantage and just taken it to him. The Astros a few weeks ago had like 4 steals in the first 5 innings off of him. Folks really trying to take advantage. Now that's something you can't do when David Ross is behind the plate. He had a -2 arm last year. He's at like a 35% cost stealing rate this year. Should be good enough for a -2, maybe a -1. He doesn't play too much, but he'll be a good defensive replacement in a replay. The only other guy you got behind the plate is Ryan Lavarnway, and he's probably like a 0, maybe a +1 for him. He doesn't play that much either. So moving from catcher over to first, and a former catcher, Mike Napoli. So it's his first full season at first base, although he played plenty of it when he was with Texas. So a player's first season in a position, typically you're not going to get the benefit of the doubt. When he's played in previous years, he's been a 4. I mean, come on, he's got to be a 4, right? I mean, he's a catcher. He's got to be slow. Plus, he's got a beard. Now, somebody needs to do an analysis of Strat players and those who have beards and what their fielding ratings are, because I think bearded people, gosh, I should have one myself. I think bearded people, quite frankly, are being discriminated against in Strat-o-matic. When's the last time you saw a guy with a beard who got a 1 as a fielding rating? Aha! Hasn't happened very often. Napoli will not be the guy to break that. He's not going to be a 1 anywhere. But I think there's actually a chance that he doesn't get a 4, and here's why. There's been talk about how he's a good athlete. He actually made an error just recently, but right now he's trending at about an E10. And you know how Strat works. It's human nature, right? If a guy makes fewer errors, plays exactly the same way, but happens to have a couple balls jump on him a little bit, maybe throws the ball away, shouldn't have anything to do with his fielding rating, but psychologically, it seems to. And how can these guys? I mean, the guys at Strat-o-matic, they do a great job trying to come up with these fielding ratings, but they can't watch every player 162 games, right? So they have to take the opinions of people who do watch them day to day. And those guys, generally sports writers, they're going to be influenced by things like this. Somebody makes a throwing error. Well, what do you think about his fielding rating or his range? One influences the other, or at least it tends to. I think there's an outside shot that Napoli gets a 3 if the Sox finish in first place. But by and large, I think he's heading for a 4. Mike Carp is the other guy who plays first base, at least a little bit. He'll probably get a 4. I'm going to cover Daniel Nava in just a second. He plays a little bit of first base as well. Moving to second base, this will be quick. This is Dustin Pedroia. He's in his heyday. He's a 1. Dustin might not make the Hall of Fame, but boy, he does everything well. and defense is definitely one of them. So he'll look like a 1. I think he's trending right now towards an E6, E7 at second base. The next position, shortstop. This is where things get complicated. Stephen Drew is a little bit simpler. Actually, he's a lot simpler than Jose Iglesias. So we'll start with Stephen Drew. He had a whole bunch of years there with Arizona where he was, like a 2E17, 2E14 pretty much every year, cranking those out. Beginning of last year, he started, what year was that? 2012 with Arizona. He actually got a 3. Then moved to Oakland the back half of 2012 where he was a little healthier, more healthy than he was in the previous part of the season. He was back to a 2. He's like a 2E12 with the A's. That's pretty much what I see him for with the Sox. I don't see him being a 3, especially given how well the Sox have done. I don't see him being a 1. You're not going to go ahead and suddenly give a guy a 1 when he's 32 years old, especially when Drew hasn't quite played the whole season. He's played about 2/3. I feel like if you're going to make that kind of shift, there have to be a bunch of things in place. I don't see him getting the 1, but he's got a low number of errors. He's trending right now to be like a 2E13 or so. So another solid year at shortstop defensively for Stephen Drew. But now we get to the guy who might give you a migraine headache if you think about it too much, Jose Iglesias. So he shifted teams, but with the Red Sox over to the Tigers, and for both teams he's played third base and shortstop. Now that Mr. Johnny Peralta will be suspended for the rest of the year, he's going to get a lot more at-bats at shortstop for the Tigers, and that may twist things a little bit. But if he were to be injured today for the rest of the year, it's pretty dicey because he's got those 4 things going. So it's shortstop for the Sox, third base for the Sox, shortstop for the Tigers, third base for the Tigers. If Strat doesn't want to ruin any replays, how do you take all 4 of those? And how do you make sure somebody replaying the season is going to split them all up evenly? Especially, shortstop is his natural position. I personally think he's got a very good shot at getting a 1. He's made this many errors so far this year at shortstop in 400 innings as a rookie. It's pretty good. So I think, again, the number of errors you make shouldn't have anything to do with your range. In fact, Johnny Peralta, who will probably be a 4E6, might argue that the less range you have, the better shot you have of making fewer errors. But I think human psychology being what it is, people are going to say, geez, he's only made 2 errors this year. They're probably going to be more inclined to give him a 1 than a 2. I don't see him getting a 3 at shortstop at all. I really don't see him getting a 2 either. The question is, what does he get at third base? Because if he gets like a 3, let's give him a mediocre rating at third base. What's that? I don't know. 3E15, 3E20, let's say, at third base. If you do that, you got him in your lineup. Are you ever going to play him at third base? And then if he gets a 1E7 at shortstop, think about that too. Who's going to have a shortstop who's better than a 1E7? So you would only be playing him at shortstop. If Strat wants to keep those even, wants him to spend just as much time at third as at short, Strat's probably going to have to make both positions a 2, which might be a little bit of a stretch at third base. I don't know if he might be worth a 2 at third. I think he's a lot better than a 2 at short. But again, Strat has those wrinkles because they want to preserve the replay first and foremost. So that'll be an interesting thing to see what Strat does. But my bet is a 1. And right now he's trending towards about an E7. Fabulous defensive player. This guy was supposed to be Ray Ordonez and hit 230. Instead, he's Ray Ordonez defensively, and he's hitting like 300. So kudos to him. He worked with Pedroia in the offseason. And boy, if you picked him up in the draft last year, he won't, I don't think he'll hit 300 every year in the bigs. I think he's definitely going to drop down into the 250s. And he's got no slugging whatsoever. But you get someone who's really good, and the guy's still only 23 years old. So that's shortstop. Boy, that was easy, huh? Third base, pretty much Will Middlebrooks. That's easy too. He was a 3E21, I think, last year, and I see him being really no different than that this year. Heard nothing either way on his defense, nothing from what I've seen in the games that I've watched that would indicate he would move. Let's jump to right field. I think Victorino's pretty much a lock to get a 2. There's an outside shot he could get a 1, because again, this guy's a center fielder by trade. Coming to the Sox, right field's a pretty big part of the park. Actually, it's the biggest part of the park at Fenway. He could get a 1, arguably, but if he gets a 1 in right, they can't give him a better defensive rating than Ellsbury in center. And I think Ellsbury's got a good shot at getting a 1 in center. He's played very well this year. He's normally a 1 when he's healthy, and he's been healthy this year. So I think Ellsbury gets the 1. I think Victorino gets the 2. If the Sox win the division, there's an outside chance of Victorino getting a 1. If the Sox don't make the playoffs at all, I suppose Ellsbury could get a 2, but I really don't see that happening. So I'm looking at a 1 and a 2 there between center and right field. Left field is where it gets a little bit more mixed. We'll start with Mike Carp. Mike Carp's easy guy. I would love to be the guy, and all I did my whole life was predict fielding ratings for Mike Carp. My job would be pretty easy. He's a 4. Another guy in left field, Johnny Gomes. Aha. What does Johnny Gomes have for facial hair? Yes, he's got a beard. What does that mean? He's a 4. I don't know. I like to think maybe somewhere, somehow, these players look up their strat ratings and figure, I'm a 4. Screw it. Might as well just throw the beard on because I have no chance of getting a better rating than that. I have heard that Gomes' defense hasn't been as bad as advertised or as bad as people feared. And I've seen him play the wall pretty well. And that's part of left field, right, for the Red Sox, is playing left field at Fenway. Granted, you have 81 games in the row that you have to play in a different field. Even if the Sox finished in first place, I don't think Gomes has played quite enough to warrant a 3. It wouldn't shock me. I mean, again, Hal is pretty tough to predict. If you're trying to predict his fielding ratings, you might have a better shot at trying to predict the stock market. But I don't see that happening. I think Gomes is going to be a 4. And the last major guy that I'll review, Daniel Nava. Wonderful story. So undrafted out of college. Gets picked up by a team in the Golden League, which is the California-only, West Coast-only independent league. I saw one of the games when I was living in Fullerton, California. I saw Jose Canseco bat third, struck out 4 times in a game, and we walked out together. Well, not really together, but we were close to each other. He threw his bats over his shoulders, walked out the parking lot, got in his car, and drove away. And that tells you all you need to know about the Golden League. The level of talent is not that high. Nava won the MVP of the Golden League his first year. The Red Sox purchased him, I'm told, for $1. Yeah, I'd buy that for $1. Brought him into their system. Slowly but surely he made it through. When he came to the bigs, he had a little bit of a... You can't see me, I'm hitting my belly. He had a little bit of a gut. Not a gut. He had a little bit of a punch. And he was a left field 4, right field 4, I think his first year, which was 2011, I want to say. He didn't play much the next year, but people have said he's worked really hard to be fit and really hard to improve his defense. So last year, he was a 3 in left, 4 in right. He did great up until about, like mid-July, and then he just started tanking. And I think he wasn't physically strong enough to handle the rigors of playing in the majors, maybe. I'm not quite sure, but he just nosedived. He's starting to do the same thing this year, but he's picked it back up again. He still got that 380 on base, and he's playing full-time. The other thing we're hearing about him is just that about his defense. His defense has gotten better, and we're seeing him going in as a defensive replacement a little bit. We're seeing him play right field when Victorino isn't out there. And right field, again, is pretty expansive at Fenway Park. I'm going to go out maybe a little bit on a limb, but maybe not. I'm going to give him a stair-step rating with a different rating in each outfield spot. 2 in left, 3 in right, 4 in center. So the other cool thing about Nava, not just his story, but he's played 1 game in center. He started 1 game in center, played 8 innings, so he'll get a rating there, probably be a 4. But for leagues where you've got to be rated in a position, he'll be able to be your center fielder, at least in a pinch, as a 4. He's also been playing a little bit of first base because Napoli's been hurt a little bit lately. I think he'll probably be a 4 at first base, but having that kind of versatility is really nice. At first base, I don't see him getting a better defensive rating than Napoli. So whatever Napoli gets, I think Nava will get the same thing. Otherwise, in a replay, Napoli does pretty well both ways, but you could arguably put Nava at first if Nava had a better defensive rating than Napoli, and then be throwing Carp and Gomes in left field. All of a sudden, Napoli isn't going to play at all because you've got Big Pappy as your DH. So I don't see Nava getting a better rating than Napoli at first base, but I do see a 2, 3, 4 in the outfield. 2 in left, 3 in right, 4 in center. And I think defense is a big part of the reason why the Red Sox are better this year than they were last year. So that's my recap of the Red Sox. Hope you found that enjoyable and informative, and I hope that some of my predictions have come true. Again, a couple of these are going to vary depending upon where the Sox finish in the playoffs. Plus, there's always that wild card. You never really know what Hal might do. He likes to pull a surprise every now and then out of his hat just to keep us on our toes. But that's it for defensive ratings. Once again, if you go to my website, Stratogist.com, you'll see you can pre-order the rookie review out there. I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate your business. Thank you very much.